What is going on, everybody? We are back again with week 7 of you called it Bring Your A Game, baby. So I'm telling you, we are in week 7. It is me, your boy, Austin Snyder. You can catch me on Twitter at AustinSnyder90, where I don't really talk much. I share random things, and every once in a while I'll mention something about sports, typically shower thoughts, though. So, as always, I am with yours truly.
You're with Amar Burton. You can catch me on Twitter. You can catch me on Instagram at Amar_206. You can also catch me on Facebook under the name Amar Burton that you see, I think you see right on your screen. So yeah, usually I got my little intro that I do, and I kind of just totally blanked and forgot it this week. So I didn't. Yeah, I just work and kids, and it was just like, oh yeah, totally forgot. Whatever. So I come up with
Feel it, man.
Really,
I spent all day raking leaves and doing yard work, and yesterday, and then today I spent all day napping, and man, but it's okay. We're talking sports, so I got my energy come back. That's,
and I thought about that because I'm watching we're recording this on Wednesday night, so I'm watching the NBA draft tonight and seeing these guys like in the prime of their life, and they're like athletic prime, and I remember Austin on Facebook talking about how he injured himself raking leaves. I was thinking of the difference between, when at the age I'm at, how you just get hurt doing like normal stuff, and it's so different from when I was at my athletic peak, and I could just play sports all day, run all day, do all this stuff, and then now it's just like, man, I got hurt reaching for something in the back of the fridge.
Oh, yeah. I don't get it, man. I think about, especially because football was always my biggest sport. And, man, I've been helicoptered in the air. I've been sandwiched between two guys 3 times my size. I've had my helmet knocked backwards and off. I've literally I've been hit so hard it made me do a backflip and land like directly on my neck. And guess what? I just popped right back up and got back to the huddle. Yeah. So and now I can't even rake leaves for a day without. I was hobbled all day. Like I said, I spent most of the day laying down, watching TV, napping, just getting my energy back for work tomorrow. So
yeah, now it's like
you're 30 years old. Just slap me like a mama.
Now it's like you sit on the floor and play with your kids, and you stand up and you like groan and grunt, and things are popping and cracking, and just like, yeah. Speaking of people that get knocked on their butt on a weekly basis, NFL quarterbacks. I'm thinking of the teams that are contending this year, like serious Super Bowl contenders, and most of them have an elite quarterback. Russell Wilson, Pat Mahomes, Ben Roethlisberger. Is this a year where you think it's possible that we can see like a 2000 Baltimore Ravens or a team that can win a Super Bowl without an elite quarterback? Is there a team like that in the league this year, like serious title contender, but they don't have that elite quarterback?
So I want to say yes, because I really, really like what the Titans are doing. I think that I think Mike Vrabel has done an amazing job with that run game, the progression of Derrick Henry, that defense. And I'll tell you, like the lone superstar over and above Derrick Henry there, the lone franchise guy is Mike Vrabel. And I mean, we watched it last year in the playoffs, as he ran down the clock on Bill Belichick. We watched it, you know what I mean? His coaching decisions have been amazing. He's probably the best Bill Belichick, coaching tree or whatever coach to come out of New England. And the guy has just done an incredible job of managing the games and stuff. But the problem is that like teams like that, like you have to control every single aspect of the game. Like you just do. And if you don't, then they don't have, like you mentioned, a Ben Roethlisberger, a Pat Mahomes, and Aaron Rodgers, or Russell Wilson. Ryan Tannehill is not those guys. So he's not the guy that's going to drive you 95 yards down the field when you're down by 3 points and need that touchdown to win the game, and extend a play on fourth down when you're at your own 30 and you need that 15 yards to stay in the game. He's just not that guy. Is he capable of those plays? Yeah, but he's not a guy that you're going to put that kind of stuff on his shoulders. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I know that's crazy to say, where it's like, you would think that if a team has, like, the Seahawks are a perfect example. Like, Russell Wilson has to play perfect. We've watched over the last, 4 weeks now, 3 weeks, Russell Wilson has had very subpar games compared to how he started the season. And look, the Seahawks have now lost 2 of their last 3 games. You know what I mean? So, like, when you put that into perspective, yes, it sounds crazy to think that, like, well, Austin, when you have a good defense, good running game, decent special teams, etc., you would think that it would be easier to maintain those games without a franchise quarterback. But that alone tells you how valuable that position is. And when you've got a guy who touches the ball on every single offensive play, it means more than all of that. So I have a hard time believing, because if that defense breaks down, if Derrick Henry gets stopped, which we've seen happen, we've seen Derrick Henry get bottled up, all of that, then you have to have a guy like the elite quarterbacks that we've named that's going to carry that team and put you over the top.
Yeah. The only teams that I can even see it possibly happening with, and it really, I guess it comes down to, do you consider these quarterbacks to be elite or not? Or do you consider this team to be a legit contender? One is Rams. And so the way they've looked recently, it's like, I don't know if they're really a Super Bowl contender, but they're looking good and they're beating teams that are considered Super Bowl contenders.
Absolutely.
They have Jared Goff. He's not necessarily an elite quarterback. And the other one is Buffalo. And it's, okay, well, do you think Josh Allen's an elite quarterback yet? He's putting up numbers, but
that's a tough one, because I think,
is he at that stage?
Right, and that's a hard one to gauge. Personally, I think that, like, he's deserving of the conversation. You know what I mean? For me, it's always about consistency. That's my biggest thing. Anybody that knows me or has followed me, anything like that, they know that consistency is huge for me. So I just have a really hard time putting a guy in that conversation after a couple seasons and one potentially MVP, especially a guy that, like, has 1 or 2 bad games and then all of a sudden nobody talks about him. Just all of a sudden, done, end of story, nobody cares. And some of that could be just the market that he's in. But to me personally, especially after watching him destroy my Seahawks, I think the guy has the makings of being like the next Ben Roethlisberger-esque player in the league, and I do think he's the future of this league in a sense. He's going to be on the same level as Mahomes and Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, all these other guys that are up and coming. So we're already here.
And with one thing I think that lacks with Buffalo and the Rams is the run game. I don't think the running backs are there. Right. The Rams defense is very good. The Bills are putting up points. They got the passing game. It's just their run game. I know they were near last in the league, I think. I'm not sure if they're still there. I'm kind of hesitant to say those teams are serious contenders. The Titans, the team that you brought up, they might fit that description. But like I said, he was playing very well during their playoff run last season, and he's had some good games this year. So, but overall, I look at the real contenders, and I'm like, I think this is the year where it's another elite quarterback that's going to do it. Whether it's Mahomes, Roethlisberger, Wilson, Brady, we can't rule them out. So like I said earlier, it's November 18th, as we're recording this, same night as the 2020 NBA draft. Always one of my favorite parts of the sporting calendar. One of the big stories this year, LaMelo Ball, number 3 overall pick, going to the Charlotte Hornets. A few years after his brother Alonzo Ball goes number 2 to the Lakers. Now he's with the New Orleans Pelicans. The story of the Balls, I mean, it was, one of the talk of the NBA, Lonzo's rookie year, and things kind of, I don't want to say he fell off, but I think the attention died down. Everything with his family and everything, it wasn't as much of a story, more recently. But now LaMelo's coming into the league. I think it's going to pop up again. The LaVar Ball story. I don't think it's going to be as hot as it was, but just how do you think this is going to play out this time around? It's almost like, LaVar had his oldest son, come through the league, and he probably learned some things about what he should do and what he shouldn't do.
Right.
And now LaMelo's here. Is it going to be like it was with Lonzo before, or are we going to see a different LaVar Ball on the big stage now with LaMelo?
I think we're going to see a more mild-mannered LaVar. And I don't mean – we're still going to hear his sound clips or his sound bites, things like that. I don't think we're going to hear as much criticism from him per se. And there's 2, possibly even 3 things at play here that work with that. The reason being, 1, the obvious fringe bust that Zoe is being considered right now. Personally, I think the kid is young. He's got game. But he just there has been very little development. You know what I mean? We've seen spurts where his shots kind of come back. He makes good decisions, yada, yada, yada. But here we are going into his 4th year in the league. He should be taking close to that next step of all-star status compared to the expectations that he had
for a number 2 pick in the draft.
Yeah. Right. Even before LaVar Ball, take LaVar Ball and all of his mess out of the equation. Like you said, he was the number 2 pick in the draft. That's a guy that, by year 3 or 4 should be making an all-star game and should be in that conversation for, potential star or superstar. So I think seeing kind of the fall of Zoe, that comes into play. Watching, the misery that was Jello, and the failed league that LaVar tried to put together, and just all of that kind of business or whatever. I think that comes into play. And then third, and the biggest thing, the absolute biggest thing, is that no one, and I mean no one, outshines Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, there couldn't have been a more perfect team for LaMelo Ball to go to. Why? Because Michael Jordan absolutely will not allow LaVar Ball to come into his house and start calling shots. Leave that. If there's anyone more hard-headed than LaVar Ball, it's Michael Jordan. And guess what? Michael Jordan gets all of the respect, all of the courtesy. He's the GOAT. So, there's nobody that's taking LaVar Ball's side when it comes to that kind of business, which I think is okay because, personally, I think LaMelo is the most talented out of all of them. It's something LaVar said himself. And I think it's great. You watch LaVar you had one little sound clip of him saying that he thought LaMelo should be the number 1 choice in the draft. Obviously he should be, but other than that, you really haven't heard much. I'm waiting to get my notification on my phone here. I'm waiting for my ESPN notification to show up and say, LaVar Ball makes some wild accusation or claim about, LaMelo being drafted where he did. But so far, nothing, which is kind of a good thing. And I think it'll put LaMelo on the right track. Because like I said, I think LaMelo is the best player of the 3. And not having to come into the same kind of target on his back like Lonzo did, that's huge. And I think it's going to play well in his favor. And watch out, Charlotte might actually start making some noise here.
I think the main thing, it's always going to come down to, can he play? Is he producing? I still really like Lonzo Ball. I've always been a big fan of his game. I definitely agree with everyone that LaMelo's a better player. LaMelo can be a better scorer, but I kind of have a bias for passers, playmakers, and so I kind of prefer Lonzo's style of play. I think he's an incredible passer. I like his defense. Like the whole thing with his shot, it's just weird because in college he was making them. And then he just got to the pros, and it went away.
It's got to be a mental thing, man. Yeah. It just has to. Like, that's the thing with me is you're correct. He was considered a very proficient shooter in college, and like almost to the extent that he was like a go-to scorer for that team, you know?
Which tells me that
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, which tells me that the ability is there for him to shoot. And he percentage-wise, he made some strides this year. I think he shot 37% from three. Compared to like 30 his rookie year.
And I think his free throw went up to like 7.
It went up to it went up to 56, but it was at 45 his rookie year. Like he was horrible his rookie year. So his numbers are gradually going up. He stayed healthy for the most part this year, which is another big thing with him.
Right.
He only missed I think fewer than 10 games this year. Because remember, it was only a 72-game season because of COVID. He played in 63 games. So, yeah, I mean, compared to his time with the Lakers, I mean, it was injury prone and he couldn't shoot. And now I think he's coming around to stay healthy for the most part of the year, and the shooting is improving. So, I still think there's time for him to, even if he's not an all-star, just to be like a really solid starting point guard in the league.
Oh yeah.
Having Zion Williamson helps a lot with that. Having Brandon Ingram helps a lot with that. He's got scores he can pass to, and so no one's going to be expecting him to score 20 a game, right? When it comes to LaMelo, I mean, he's got talent. It's kind of like I haven't seen him play on the same stage like with Lonzo. I haven't seen him play like in college, so
right.
There's still some mystery there. Who was he playing against? How good is he really?
See, and that's what's tough for me is like basketball above and beyond any other sport drafts almost solely based off of potential, right? Like I've never seen a sport that like they'll take the guy who spent 4 months on campus playing basketball over the guy who spent 4 years with the same program that showed success. That what I mean? Like it's just crazy to me, just solely based off of potential. And like obviously, to me, when you watch a guy like Jello, who anybody who knows basketball, anybody who follows the Ball brother or Ball family, and just has any inkling of basketball knows that like. No matter, and I hate to say because I like the Balls a lot, but Jello is not an NBA basketball player. Right. Never was going to be. He would have been lucky to see any playing time in UCLA if he played all 4 years. It just was never going to happen. He's too slow. He's terrible at handling the ball. His shot is inconsistent. He's not a super great rebounder. His post moves are horrible. Not a super great defender. Great hustle guy. I'll give him that. He's a great hustle guy, but he's just too average at too many things and not great at any of them to be an NBA basketball player, right? But yet we saw as he went overseas and he played on same teams as LaMelo and stuff, he put up numbers. So that's concerning for me. If a guy like Jello is putting up big numbers, right, next to LaMelo, well, how much progress did we actually see out of LaMelo? How much are we really, really drafting this guy based off of like what he can do compared to what the potential is? You know what I mean? Right. Like, where's this guy at in his development now compared to where the hope is after he spent a year or two with an actual professional NBA team? So, because personally, I think LaMelo is incredibly immature as well. I've seen the kid mature substantially. Like I watched their Facebook show and all that stuff, but not to the point that like I would trust that kid to be the face of my franchise. Yeah. And even more so to the point that I think he's the most mature of the three, the most talented, gifted of the three brothers, but he is absolutely the most immature. And even in a sense of like more mature than what I would expect a kid his age, because he's 18 years old, 19-year-old kid, even more mature than what I would expect a kid at that age to be. So like that's going to play huge when you get into a locker room with 35-plus-year-old grown men who have made a career out of this, that know the do's and don'ts and whether or not he's going to take that guidance. So
yeah. And speaking of, growth and maturity, I mean, it should be noted that at this time a year ago, LaVar was talking about Jello should have been the number one pick over Zion Williamson. Right. the fact that we haven't heard anything like that this year,
that's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah, we haven't heard him say anything like really crazy. And so I'm like,
he made one comment about Melo should be the number one, which is fine. Yeah. Absolutely. A lot of people agreed that he should be in that discussion. So
yeah, no, there were draft experts that a lot of people had LaMelo going on. I think that was, really a crazy thing for him to say at all compared to saying Jello should have been the top pick. So
right.
I think, perhaps LaVar has learned some lessons along the way of how to do this, high profile sports dad thing.
Right.
I think it's going to make a big difference that from everything I can tell, LaVar doesn't have as much control over LaMelo's career, professionally right now. I think Lonzo.
I don't know how much you followed, what has transpired with that family recently. But I think that here's my problem with it is for me, it's really hard. It's just like the Kardashians. Mm-hmm. It's hard to gauge what's what drama are you creating for your television show and what drama is actually real. But it would seem that the drama that had happened, including a close family member, embezzling a ton of Lonzo's money that LaVar was supposed to be investing the proper way, and then to a certain extent, Zoe totally cut him out. Zoe is like, LaVar, I don't want anything to do with you. You're painting a target on my back that I never asked for.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought Lonzo was with another. He's with another agency now or something.
Right? Yeah, I dropped his training, his agent. All of it said, no, I don't want anything that you've given to me or pushed me towards. It's all wrong, and I understand that now. And it's funny because a lot of people for a long time was like, dude, when is Lonzo going to finally step up to his dad and say, hey, enough is enough? Because we all knew that LaVar was not going away or not going to stop being LaVar Ball until that happened. And it sounds like it did. And I wish them all the best as a family. And I hope that things are good. And I hope they're doing well. And I hope, we're at a point now where, they're all talking again, because I love LaVar Ball purely from the aspect of a father. You know what I mean? As a father, you being a new father, you can understand that, man, I will do anything for my kids. And if that means getting up on national TV and making myself look like a damn fool so that they can get the media attention, the contracts, the sponsorships, they can get all of that and live the life that I want them to, or I hope for them to live, or they want to live out, or whatever, I'll absolutely do that, you know. But like you said, it's just there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and he was going about it the wrong way. So I think he's really matured and learned past that.
And I was thinking about that because when Lonzo came through, I wasn't a dad, and now I am. Right. As LaMelo's coming through. And so it has changed my perspective on it a little bit. You're definitely right. I mean, all of us would do anything for our kids to set them up to have the most success. I think that where LaVar was starting to go off course was he was the story. Right. And Lonzo wasn't the story.
I think he started to like that a little bit too much.
Right. And it was kind of maybe getting a little bit to his head. And so I kind of think just like how, when a lot of parents, you have your first kid and you make mistakes with them, and then you have your second kid and you've learned some things. You went through some things with the first kid. For me, I got twins, and so I'm doing it at the same time.
You don't get that learning curve. You can't screw these ones up. I could screw my first one up. I got a second and a third one that I'll get right. That's
my learning curve is like an hour. Okay, I made that mistake an hour. It's been 3 years since Lonzo came through to the pros. And so, I think LaVar's learned some things. I think he's going to handle it better. I think part of it is the market. It's not LA, it's Charlotte. And
Right.
Lonzo, even if LaVar was very much involved with him, he's in New Orleans now. He's not on the Lakers, he's not on the Knicks, he's not, in Miami. So I think that kind of helps, because I think the best thing for Lonzo and LaMelo was just be able to be like another rookie and not
Absolutely.
have extra added pressure on them. I mean, because you already have pressure as a number 2, number 3 overall pick,
Of
right?
course.
And then just this, your dad's bringing in this extra pressure, like putting a target on your back. So I think as long as he's not doing that with LaMelo, he'll be fine. I'm anxious to see what kind of player he's going to be, just because I want to see him against some NBA competition.
Yeah.
I think he could be good. I don't know if he's like an all-star, if he's a superstar, but I think he could be a scorer in the league, like a good, scorer, playmaker in the league. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Was there anything else about the draft that kind of stood out to you today?
Other than you and I kind of had a conversation beforehand about Anthony Davis, or I'm sorry, Anthony Edwards, and mentioning that he might not really be into basketball, and I think it's a very much a knee-jerk reaction for folks to all of a sudden act like this kid's not going to play basketball, or this is a red flag, this should be a major concern. At the end of the day, it shouldn't matter what the motivation of a player is, as long as he can play,
Right.
and I just, like you and I talked about earlier, I think it's a little ridiculous to put forth this thought process that these kids have to eat, sleep, and live this game. At the end, it's a job, and even in my line of work, selling cars,
Yeah.
I sell cars for one reason and one reason only. I'm a high school dropout that makes 6 figures a year. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, not to brag or anything, but it's just like that. It's an end to a means that I have, and it allows me to take care of my family, live a comfortable lifestyle, and without having to do backbreaking labor. And for some guys, that's what basketball or professional sports is. They know that they can get these huge multi-million-dollar contracts and build the kind of generational wealth that their family has never seen before. And people don't understand how, like, we're talking for generations and generations and generations and generations. This dude and his kids and his grandkids and his great-grandkids and all that kind of stuff will never have to live in poverty if that's what they were doing, or they can now live in that 1% wealth market. Like maybe he's never had before. So it shouldn't matter if his heart is into the game or not. If his motivation is money, then you better believe he's going to bust his butt and he's going to play as well as he possibly can, because he understands that's how he gets those big, huge, fat contracts for $100 million that creates that kind of generational wealth. So
yeah, and I'm sure there's people that you work with that maybe selling cars, like, it is their life and it is their passion and they love it, and they do work harder than everyone else, and they're they really grind, and like that's their thing. And other people, they don't have that same mindset, and that's fine as long as they produce, right?
I'm an Anthony Edwards. I'm 100%, and I you know what, I've heard the flack for it before too. Hey, you're our most talented salesman. You should be doing more. Do you just not care? But no, I do care. I 100% care about money. I care about making money, and I care about supporting my family. But anything above and beyond and past that, it's for the birds, bro. You know what I mean? And like, and I say this, I make this, I guess, comparison, because like my job very much is like pro sports. It can be seen as incredibly easy with huge rewards financially, So yeah, and you're right. There are guys there that will show up 2 hours before the store opens because they want to get the first customer, and they'll work every single day off of theirs, and whatever. And like, more power to them. And not to say that I won't put in that type of work ethic if I need to, but only if I'm in a contract year, right? Like, and last contract wasn't going so great. Yeah, I'll put in that time, that effort, and that work. So why? So my family can be taken care of. But otherwise, above and beyond that, No. If I could be a stay-at-home dad for the rest of my life, I absolutely would do that.
Look,
with no shame. Like, with it, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I told my fiance, I'm like, look, like if you start making, the kind of money that she's capable of making doing what she does, I'm like, every month I'm like, are you sure you don't want me to just be a stay-at-home dad? Because I can do it. I can do it. Like, it's actually probably the thing I'm best at. Is like this. So check
it out. The kids like me better anyways. We'll play video games. We'll kick it. Like, it's all gravy. We could do that. Oh yeah, 100%. But again, we kind of got off the rails. But my point is I think that we should all kind of pump the brakes before we start chastising this kid or making remarks that he's a bum or not going to be in the league, or we should look for red flags because at the end of the day, it just shouldn't matter what his motivation is, just as long as he produces. So
yep. And the NBA draft is one of the big stories of the week, the story of today. Makes me think of a few months ago when we had the WNBA draft and it was not on the radar like that.
They do that stuff?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, no, like it came and it went, and people who were fans of the league talked about it. It didn't lead off Sports Center. They had a real topic here, so it might have. But just in general, like whenever the NBA draft or the NBA finals comes around, it just is this reminder of kind of how far behind the WNBA is. And I don't think realistically we should catch up to the NBA, but I think the WNBA could have a realistic goal of kind of surviving on its own 2 feet and maximizing its potential as a league to be more lucrative, to be more popular. But how do you do that? And it's something you and I kind of, we've talked about before. Like, what do you think? Like, how can the WNBA get bigger, get more popular, become more lucrative?
I think the biggest thing is that the WNBA needs to. Here's one thing, and I mentioned this on I think a group that you had been commenting on the post as well about the WNBA. I can't remember the Facebook group, but anyways, one thing I think the WNBA should really, really do. Somebody had mentioned that lower the rims and go for the dunking and blah blah. Screw that. I think that's a terrible idea. You know what you do? You start really highlighting your shooters, and you start really picking up the pace of the game, and you start really pushing forward in terms of advertising and faces of the leagues and stuff. First off, you do that in general, like promote your superstars more often as possible, as much as possible. Second of all, your shooters. You want the ball in the chick's hand that can shoot out the gym like Steph Curry, right? Because that's what people want to see. And if a majority of your league cannot do the high flying dunks or crazy layups or crazy alley-oops or whatever, then insane passing and insane shooting, that needs to be your go-to. Create an incredibly fast-paced, high-scoring jump shots, passes, handles, like that's the atmosphere that you create, or at least you lean on, right? And by doing that, you'll allow yourself to separate a bit and still stand up, whilst also creating or pushing this brand of basketball that very much interests people to this day. It's tough though, and I see the argument every single season about women basketball players in the WNBA and how little they get paid and blah 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 blah. Look, I'm a fan of the WNBA. Amar and I are one of the only fans of the WNBA. As little a percentage amount that they have of the market share, we're a part of it. But you can't tell me that these ladies deserve $100 million contracts like the men when their league can't even stand on its own 2 feet. It has to have the NBA. Otherwise, it doesn't even exist. So if you think that having to play overseas in the off season is bad to make some extra cash, try always having to play overseas because there is no WNBA, right? So that argument is null and void. It doesn't even matter. Second of all, I think that's where the players really have, like, if you want it, you really have to push for it. And that's where you kind of have to put your foot down, and you need to, because I'll tell you the one thing that I really like about these gals, the NBA players even don't even do that well, is the engagement with their fan bases.
Yep.
There's a lot of gals. What's her name? Cambridge from the Las Vegas team. Isn't that her name? The big gal, the center?
Liz Cambridge, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Liz Cambridge. I love that chick on social media. I watch her practice height videos. I watch her workout videos. She gets on there and comments and this and that, and she engages her audience. And I think that if they did that more, right, like really spend some time on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and reply to people, talk to people, get out there, get your name out there, do some funny challenges. Just like, I just think that the players really have to take the bull by the horns on this if they really want the league to succeed. And by doing that, I think you're going to capture a bit more of an audience, if for nothing else, people saying, man, you know what, I really like the personality of these gals and the fact that they're really going for it. So least I can do is tune in and catch their game, you know?
Yeah, the thing about, the dunking, they don't dunk and all that. Especially today's basketball. A lot of players in the NBA are not popular because they dunk. James Harden isn't like a dunker. Kevin Durant's not a dunker. Steph Curry's not a dunker. They can, Curry don't really do it.
On a fast break with,
like James Harden will dunk. Kevin Durant can dunk on anybody, but that's not the part of their game that people tune in to watch. It's the ball handling and the shooting and just the scoring. Yep. And so there's no reason why a WNBA player needs to dunk to become a star, right? So, Diana Taurasi, I mean, she's getting older, but like in her prime, and she can still do it. But, if you have someone like her, Diana Taurasi, playing the way she did, she could absolutely be a superstar.
Oh, yeah.
Without having to dunk, So that part, I don't think that's like a really valid argument, that they need to lower the rims or they need to get more players who could dunk. That's kind of dumb. To what you said, the pay equality, that's just not going to happen. Just the business of the league and the finances. Like, the league doesn't generate nearly as much money as the NBA, and so they can't pay their players as much as NBA players. It's not about being sexist or anything like that, discriminatory.
It's just not feasible.
They cannot afford to pay them $5 million a year, let alone $25 million a year. Like, it's just not going to happen. So what they can do, I think, to become more popular, to kind of grab a bigger part of the market share, like you said, promote your stars, the things that we say that Major League Baseball doesn't do, right? Promote your stars, be more active and creative with social media, make your league and your game fun and cool. And you don't have to bastardize the game to do that. You don't have to change what is basketball, so you don't need to add a 4-point shot. You don't need to lower the rim. You don't need to do anything crazy. Just focus on your personalities. And they have players in that league with personalities that are fun to follow. Like you said, like people that you follow on social media. So I think right now it's like, they're surviving. It's the most important part. They're hanging around. It's been over 20 years.
Which is good. No small feat. And whether or not you want to accredit only the NBA for that or not, at the end of the day, if the NBA thought that there was no financial viability out of that league whatsoever, right? Even if it is just to like, hey, we're going to garner more females to buy jerseys and this and that, commercial portion of it, then they wouldn't continue to do it. You know what I mean? So, like, obviously they've done something to remain slightly relevant. I mean, shoot, we're talking about them right now, So to a degree, it's not like they're totally a non-factor when it comes to creating some forms of narrative.
Yeah. Which this will bring me into my segment, because we've been talking about the draft, about what I'm going to tell my kids about. And what I'm going to tell my kids about when they're old enough, because right now they're infants and they don't listen to me or anything I say. I'm gonna tell my kids about the NBA draft. Now, as I said earlier, NBA draft, one of my favorite things of the sports year, along with the NFL draft. The reason why I like watching the draft is I like watching these athletes see their dreams come true. And I like seeing them have that moment where, like, you know, you've made it. Like, the draft is like this combination of graduation and winning the lottery.
Right.
Right. Because it's not like you just lucked out, you know, but like you worked for this, you know, you worked your butt off for however many years, you know, probably, you know, in most cases since you were a little kid to reach this super exclusive club. There's only a few hundred that make it to the NBA.
Right.
You know, and you've worked, you've got to this point. And no, we don't know how your career is going to turn out. You know, some of these guys that we saw tonight get drafted, we might never talk about them after this. You know, like they will enter the league and just kind of become a guy, a role player on a roster. Yep. Some of them might not even make the roster, you know, a lot of those second round picks. But this is their night. You know, this is their night when the possibilities are endless. They could be superstars, they could not, but for now, they've made it. You know, they heard their name called, they put on the hat, like, and I think all of us is like negative and jaded as so many sports fans are. I still think all of us started watching because we loved it, and we liked success, and we liked seeing people succeed and do well and win. And the draft is just an example of that. Like, there's no losers that get picked in the NBA draft, right? Everyone featured that night has won.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. You get to see these kids who have spent, I mean, especially in this day and age. I watched this video right before we started shooting ours on TikTok of this 9-year-old kid play, you know, and dad's hitting him with the pad. He not abusing him, but he's doing running back drills with him. And in this video, they're talking about, oh, class of 2029, watch out. And I'm like, this kid's 9 years old. Like, what the hell is going on? Yeah. And mind you, he was a pretty ripped little 9-year-old, but I'm thinking, like, man, I remember when my son was 7, 8, 9 years old. I mean, we used to do that a lot. I'd run a lot of football drills with him, partly because, like, I was a young father when he was first born, right? So I didn't know, like, no, what do you do as a dad? And I'm like, well, I know how to run football drills. I just graduated high school not too long ago, or left high school, you know, not too long ago. So, like, that's how I know how to burn energy, you know. But my point is that you're right. These kids spend their whole lives. And again, we're not talking about just the fact that they made it pro, but like, these kids are going into, a lot of these kids are going into this coming from being raised from, like, poverty or just bad areas, or just never seeing, you know, watching their parents struggle to pay the bills and living paycheck to paycheck. And, you know, if the car breaks down, now they've got to, well, I know we saved up $300 for your college fund so far, but now we got to, you know, replace the alternator, or replace the batteries or brakes or whatever, you know. And so to get to that point and know that, like, not only are they changing their lives, but they're changing their parents' lives, their family names' lives, you know. And like, that's huge. That's incredible. And you see that emotion and that experience wash over them. It's just so cool to see, man. It's so cool to, like, watch them realize that. Even guys like LaMelo Ball, you know, who, like, his brother's an NBA star, his dad, you know, was the one in the media, et cetera, this, that, and the other. Just even knowing that a kid like that, who, despite all the adversity, all the drama, all the cameras, all the media, all the everything constantly in his face, around his life 24/7, he still put his nose to the grindstone and he still made it to the league. That's amazing. Good for him, man. That's off.
And did you see Cole Anthony's reaction when he got drafted?
Yes.
And you could look at him and say, well, his dad was in the NBA. Like, you know, he's maybe already rich, you know,
Right.
he grew up with money, you know what
right.
I mean?
Like never had to want for
Right.
anything.
But even him, you saw his reaction getting drafted. Like, it was really emotional for him, and it was like he had achieved this thing. They talked before the draft about how Cole Anthony's mother had made like a documentary about his like AAU team when he was how old would he have been? Like I don't know, 11 or something like that. And it was funny because it said the film was from 2013, and Cole Anthony was talking about it today, and he's like, "Yeah, man, that's like half my life." And I realized, like, I'm like, well, yeah, right. You know, like when young people say, you know, like I can do this my whole life or half my life, and you think like, well, it's only like 10 years, but that's half their life, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, like they've been working at this long, and yeah, like to reach that peak, it's like, you know, the draft and the like winning championships are two of the things I
even
love to
just
watch most in
having the
sports.
fortitude as a child to stick with something like that.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love sports. I love football. I love basketball, all that stuff. But like there was no way as a kid that I was like devoting myself so much to that sport that there was nothing that I ever wanted to do or ever saw myself doing. You know what I mean? Like these kids, every decision they make, they're like, well, how is this going to affect my ability to make it to the league? You know what I mean? Like since they were 10 years old. So especially now because we're watching guys like, you know, Zion Williamson. We've all been watching this kid since he was 14, 15 years old. Bronny Jr., we've all been watching him since he was 10, 11 years old in AAU. I mean, they're seeing national recognition from incredibly young ages. So that's crazy.
Yeah. I sometimes would watch whatever it was, like the last game of the Stanley Cup final. I would watch, you know, like the last period of it because I wanted to see the moment when the series was over and those guys are celebrating the championship, because I just like watching. I like watching the celebration, even if I don't know the sport or the players. Like, and the draft is kind of a similar thing to me. It's like, you know, I like it's one of the, I think, just kind of like purely positive nights in sports. And so those are the kind of things that, you know, to get back to my point, that, you know, I want to pass on to my kids and have them enjoy as well. Because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be something that we enjoy. It's supposed to be entertainment. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a positive thing. So that's what I get from the draft.
Hell yeah.
Love it, man. From that, before we get out of here, I did have a cold take.
I don't have a sports 101 topic this week. I've been searching. So you guys have homework instead. Just find a cool ass stat that you don't know about and research it. All right. I can't always be filling your heads with knowledge. But I do want to give a special shout out to my homie, my new friend, Travis Urlacher. And yes, you did hear that last name right, Urlacher. I sold him a truck a few weeks ago, and I told him I'd give him a shout out for this, for getting him a hell of a deal on a nice little Chevy Silverado there. He hooked me up with a signed picture from his cousin, Mr. Brian Urlacher.
Okay.
And I thought that was just cool as hell. And it's a really cool picture. There's his signature right there. It's in mint condition there. And then what's even better is I see the way he's looking. I set him right here because then he just has that look like, man, I wish I had always played for the Seahawks. You know, that's
so petty.
Like if I could have donned the Seahawks,
just so petty, and just makes everything comes back to the Seahawks with Austin. It's just like,
I love it.
Like, you could be talking about golf and he turns it into like a Russell Wilson, you know, praise fest. I don't know how that works. I did before we get out of here though, I did see a cold take the other day that I was going to share. This was from a Facebook sports group I'm in, and this person says, unpopular opinion. This is always one sign when someone says unpopular opinion.
Of course,
because they're usually what I tell them is that opinion is unpopular for a reason, because it's wrong. He goes, unpopular opinion. Chris Paul is nothing more than a role player who will never help a team win a championship. Okay. I can very much believe, especially because he just got traded to the Phoenix Suns, that Chris Paul will retire without a championship, right?
Yes.
Towards the end of the line, he hasn't got one yet, unless there's a small number of NBA teams that can win it all. Unless he goes to one of them, he's not going to win it all. But to say Chris Paul is nothing more than a role player, and I don't know if he meant at this stage in his career or if he meant overall, all time. Either way, that's dumb. Chris Paul
Even at
is
this
not,
stage in his career, dude, look what he just did with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Right. Like the whole narrative with Chris Paul this year is he took this Oklahoma City team that everyone had written off, that he supposedly didn't want to play for, and he was going to sulk and all that.
Yeah, dude, from the word go, it was, well, he won't even suit up in a Thunder uniform. They're going to trade him the first chance they can get. They're going to move him to the Lakers or the Clippers or the Nets or one of these other teams that needs a point guard or that needs the veteran presence, that's one player away from being a surefire championship contender, finals winner. And look what he did. He took him to the playoffs. And, what? That blows me away.
Took him to the playoffs. He almost got a career high in the field goal percentage. 17 points, 6 assists, 6.7 assists, 1.6 steals a game. Chris Paul could still play. Chris Paul is still a star player. He's never been a role player in the league, unless he plays until he's 40 or something. He's never going to be a role player in the league. So I don't know where that came from, but again, unpopular opinion for a reason. So
the problem is too many people, guys like that, stop playing 2K so much, okay? Mm-hmm. Just because you've degraded him to your bench on a team that you fantasy drafted and put a bunch of studs on does not mean that in real life, one of the top 5 greatest point guards to ever play the game, to ever step on a basketball court, who's still single-handedly, in a sense, leading teams to the playoffs, he is not a role player.
Nope.
And you do not know basketball. So stop. Leave it alone.
And take that advice from someone who I learned today is not a role player, because he apparently is the most talented salesman at his car lot, right? So anyway, so Mr. Superstar, you want to go ahead and take us out of here?
Absolutely. Thank you guys again. This is week 7. 7 weeks already in the books of Bring Your A Game. And as the title in the name says, when you come to this channel, you better come correct and bring your A game. Cue that mother music, Brian. Have a good night, guys. Peace.